Hello and welcome to the show. I'm Eric Murphy.
I'm Vila Bianca,
This is Skeptic Generation.
and we need to talk.
Yes, we do. And we have an echo.
You can't hear it, but we can.
How about now?
That's better.
There we go. Okay. Hey, V.
Hi!
So I think that is just the curse.
Yeah.
Murphy's Law. So right before the show started, our X-Air mixer just decided that it wasn't going to do its job. And so all of our audio was wonky up until about 2 minutes ago and just got it going just in time. So we're glad that we're going. Hey, everyone. We're glad you made it. It is October 24th, 2021. This is Skeptic Generation. We've got a couple really cool things before we dive in. Not too much. As always, the show's brought to you by you. Thank you so much. If you like what we do and we want to support us, or you just want to get an ad-free version of the podcast or the video, consider going to patreon.com/skepticgeneration, where those are tiers that you can get if you want to help us quickly, make the studio better. We've got lots of plans for the studio, and if you don't want to wait, we've got an Amazon wish list and a place where you can give us a coffee if you want to buy us a coffee. So that's that.
It says, people are saying my mic isn't working.
Your mic isn't working?
Yeah.
Oh my, well, let's fix that. In the meantime, let's talk about October.
Yeah, so we are going to be doing a Halloween episode next week because we are going to be streaming on Halloween. There I am.
Yeah.
Hi, everybody.
Hi.
It's nice to be here with you. We're going to be doing a Halloween episode next week. So we're coming in costume. If you would like to send us costume pics, we will post those on our Twitter account.
Ooh, that sounds like fun.
Yeah, SG Halloween.
So if people want to tweet us, what's our Twitter handle?
Our Twitter is @SkepticShow. Somehow we got that handle. If you want to follow us on Twitter, if you want to join the Facebook group, we are over 500 members now. It is a public group, so if you're not out or you don't want people in your life to see you there, then that's, understandable. You can check out our Discord instead. We've got a bunch of ways for you to keep in touch with the community here.
Yeah, so we've got a couple of callers on the line, but we would definitely prefer more. We had an amazing group of theist callers, and we'd love to talk to some more. If you're a religious person or if you just believe something that we probably don't, you should call us and tell us what you believe and why. We want to talk to you about it. 585.
Bonus points for ghost stories.
Ooh, especially next week, too.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's get into the spirit. 585-526-8774. That's 585-LaMurph. Or you can go to tiny.cc/callsg. It's right down there on the lower third. You can see it scrolling on by. Capital S, capital G. Or even one more way, if you're watching live on YouTube right now, there's a link to call the show in the banner on our YouTube channel. So give us a call. We want to talk to you. Anything else before we dive in?
I think we're good.
All right. Let's start off and talk to Lily in Arizona.
Absolutely.
Lily, you're live with Eric and V.
Hello. It's been a very long while.
It has been.
What did you want to talk about today?
I'm here to sort of continue. It's been a while, so it's not like we're continuing where we left off because my views have changed a little bit
Ooh, okay.
in some ways. But I'm hoping to have this call get into the heart of what it is that I believe about mathematics.
Ooh, I
And
love
its role in
mathematics.
stuff
Okay.
like that.
This is going to be all you guys.
Oh, I'm loving it. Okay, so
I don't think so. Plot twist,
what do you got?
it's about art, V.
Oh, well, then I'm good too. We're good.
Okay. What's
Yeah.
your take on
Balance
math?
for everyone. It is primarily an experiential endeavor. It is something that humans do with abstracts. It is not about the ontology of the abstracts themselves. Independent of, if you're a Platonist, which I'm not anymore, or, whatever you believe about whether numbers exist, math is about how we feel when we're doing that sort of stuff.
Math is about how we feel.
I guess I kind of want to pin down a couple of things, and I want people to be able to follow with us. So would you mind if I kind of repeated a bit back to you and made sure that I was on the same page?
Please do.
Okay, cool. So when you're talking about ontology, when you're talking about the way we interact with math, you're not saying that math isn't real or that math doesn't work, because math does. It's just that math does not essentially correspond to things in reality. I can count imaginary things, one Daffy Duck, two Daffy Duck, three Daffy Ducks. I can add them, multiply them, subtract them, but that doesn't make Daffy Duck real in real life. And so that's what you mean by abstract. And so when you're saying it doesn't matter ontologically would just be what exists. And so you're saying it doesn't matter whether or not it exists. It matters whether or not we're applying that math to something that we can use that math with. And I'm entirely on board so far, I think. I think the only place where I would kind of fudge it a little bit is I would just add like a caveat to the beginning saying that this in no way invalidates that math is effective. When done right, but that our use of it is limited to, where we're applying it. Does that sound about right? Do you disagree with me?
Everything except for that done right. What does done right mathematics mean? Of course, it's obvious that when you add, say, 1 to 1, you get 2, right? But that's the right way to do it, except in all of the situations where it's not. For example, when Boole came out with his, modular arithmetic 1 plus 1 being 0, that's how we get computers. Or if I'm going to round my time because that's what I have with me right now, 10, in 7 hours for me it'll be 5. 10 plus 7 is now 5? No. We're doing modular arithmetic. There are ways to break the rules for good. It's entirely context dependent.
Well, I agree and disagree. I don't think that's doing math. I still think that's doing math right. You're just keeping it in the context of what it belongs, right? You can count single apples and you can count bushels of apples, but 5 apples plus 2 bushels does not make 7, right? You're contextualizing it there. I still think that's doing math right. That's just making sure that you're keeping track of what base you're in. Mathematics is not limited to base 10. So just being consistent, I think, is necessary.
Yeah. It absolutely needs consistency and context dependency. Part of what leads me to my sort of experiential view, well, I did have an experience where I saw something in math that I thought was really beautiful and I cried for 3 hours, which was kind of pathetic. But that sort of motivates me in a way.
You are Lily, you are my people. You are my people, Lily.
Well,
I love
it's
that.
like, if you've ever been motivated to tears by beautiful music, that's exactly the sort of thing that happens for me when I'm just like, let's hash out like this really neat, obscure proof for the handshake lemma on graph using the infinite matrices for this and that. I'm just like, yes, that's pretty, and I'm going to cry about it because it's so freaking cool that I get to. It's like there's this playground in my mind with ideas that I just get to run wild with, and that's sort of because what makes it now okay that we've done it in a single base, addition, I should say, in a single base forever, and then Boole comes out with, a binary system, a base 2 system that we run our computers on today, or, modular arithmetic base 12 for our clocks. Somebody thinking to do that.
If that blows your mind, I think extra credits, the channel, I believe it's extra credits. Either it's extra credits or maybe it's numberphile. I've been really bad about remembering the exact channel, but if I'm wrong on both cases, I'll try and look it up. There's an entire video detailing how non-Newtonian physics, came about, and how it just it's fantastic. And for people who are watching who are just zoning out, because I can see V's soul leaving their body,
just a little bit,
as for a turn of phrase. What's amazing, you guys watching this, like, I've never been a math person. I've never really enjoyed math. I know that the payoff for math is way at the end after you've done all of the intense, boring work. But let me tell you something. Math is philosophy. Philosophy is math in many cases. And being able to see that and understand that really does help. Because Lily, I think your view on the subjective take of understanding mathematics I would never have gotten there if it wasn't for philosophy. I would never have gotten there. I would have thought, 1 + 1 always equals 2. But no, because nobody really thinks. It seems obvious, but 1 apple plus a bushel of apples does not equal 2 apples, right? It is entirely context dependent. And in that same way, we just need to apply that kind of thinking, to everything else. And it helps in so many arenas.
That's what makes it art. I love that you said that, Eric, so much, because that's what makes it art. Is that it's a creative endeavor. You're asking, primarily, from what I've seen, aesthetic questions. You're guided by asking a question about some structure on an abstract, which I know is, but, how much of, if you put a triangle in a box, how much of its box does it take up, and why is that so? You're asking questions, you can draw pictures, you can sort of probe into this.
Yeah, how many spheres can you fit into that container?
What is mathematically correct?
Yeah, so Lily, you are the kind of person that I would just talk all night to. I adore it. I wish that I had more time. I know that we've got to get to a couple of other callers, but I wanted to make sure that I had time, and V had time first of all to dive in to respond.
Oh, I'm not diving into this one.
Okay.
I think it's a fascinating conversation for those of us who understand math enough to see its beauty. I'm with the chat. I've also cried over math, but not because of joy. Thanks
Love it.
for that one.
Would you like it if I called would you like it if I called back another day to maybe talk about my views about why math education sucks and how we can fix it?
Oh, I have lots of feelings
Traitor.
about that. So, yeah, absolutely.
Traitor. Lily, thank you so much for calling in.
Thank you for bringing me back on. I've missed you guys.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Take
Bye.
care. Aw. Yay.
Oh,
Okay,
gosh.
so before we dive into the next call, I did see a couple of things in the live chat that I just kind of wanted to respond to.
Yeah, but first, before
yeah.
we do that, we may pull something from the live chat if it tickles our fancy or if we really want to talk about it. If you want to guarantee that we are going to read your comment on air and respond to it, the best way to do that is to send us super chats. So if you want to weigh in on a conversation or, excuse me, if you want to ask a question but don't want to be on the air, all of those are good reasons to jump into the super chat pool.
And we do. We read out the super chats at the end of every episode. We never mention that. We got to get better about that. People got to, while we're on the subject, hey, everybody, if you like this, subscribe, ring the bell, share this out on social media if you're able to, because this show is growing and we want to continue to do so. And your sub really matters because the algorithm is watching. And right now it likes us. And we want to keep it that way. I did see in the chat people are saying, and I saw this last week as well, and it's kind of blowing my mind.
What's that?
It's been coming up more and more often. People saying that you're boosting the bass on Eric's voice way too much, and it's annoying and it's frustrating, and we're not boosting the bass.
It's just his voice that's annoying and frustrating.
And I agree with you. I agree with you. I hate my stupid voice. I hate my stupid face. I'm trying my absolute best, but I can't change that. I'm sorry.
That said, if you do want to go back and rewatch, especially the Patreon version of this episode and the podcast and all of the clips, they are audio engineered after the fact. We can only do so much with just the two of us in the moment, but we go through the whole thing afterwards and, normalize everything.
Should we tell them really quick? I know we've got calls, but I'd be happy to tell them a little bit more about that.
I think we should jump to this next call first.
Okay, sounds good. Who are we taking next?
Let's take Ted in Pennsylvania.
Okay.
Whoops.
Oh.
Well, hi, Ted.
Wow, Ted, you had a glorious entry. Yeah. Hi, you're talking to Eric and V. Ted? Ted, are you there? Ted going once. Ted going twice.
Hello. Sorry.
Hey!
Hello.
I'm here.
No worries. If you've got the show on in the background, it might... Yeah.
Sorry about that.
That's okay. Yeah, if you could take us off speaker and make sure that you're in a room where the show's not playing, we won't get feedback and stuff. It'll be good.
Yeah, I did.
Cool. Okay, what'd you want to talk about?
Something Sam Harris brought up on his podcast recently, and something I've been thinking about a lot lately is it's called generic subjective continuity. And it's what a lot of not a lot, but a few naturalists believe happens after we die. So
Interesting.
Generic subjective continuity. I know what each of those words means, Ted.
yeah,
That does not.
philosophically.
I know what each of those words means, but I would love to learn about the subject. What the hell are you talking about?
So it says that generic subjective continuity says that whenever we die, we completely and utterly cease to exist. We decompose. The one who dies no longer exists. That consciousness has completely ended.
Yeah.
But because there will be consciousnesses that do come into existence after that person or animal's death, then that person or animal's death will not be followed by an experience of a black void or nothingness. Instead, we should conclude that because new consciousnesses will come to exist, that death will actually be followed by one of those new consciousnesses as opposed to nothingness.
So you're saying reincarnation, kind of?
No, well, some people do call it naturalistic reincarnation. It has been called that because there's no soul. There's no, when I die, my soul won't go into a new body or anything like that. It's more simply that there will be consciousness after I die.
Interesting. Okay, well, I think the biggest question that I would have, because for a while I did actually kind of play around with the idea of reincarnation when I was exiting my Christian faith, and I like the idea of it, honestly. I think it's interesting. I guess I'm curious where that consciousness lives or exists, or how it exists outside of a physical body. I'd imagine that would be a requirement.
No, it isn't that it exists outside of a body. It's just that the same way that your brain, if our brains are responsible for consciousness, then because new brains will also be responsible for consciousnesses after I die, then there will be consciousness after I die. It won't be like...
It won't be your consciousness.
So it's just the concept
right,
that...
it won't be my consciousness.
So this is essentially just people or animals or conscious beings will continue to exist after your consciousness ends?
Yes, and because of that, that means that after I die, there will be experience after I die, as opposed to nothingness.
Oh, I've heard of this before, actually. This is not, I didn't know that this is what it was called, so thank you for the terminology. But I've actually talked with a couple different people who had this kind of view, and I mean, I agree with it. I guess the way that, to me, it makes it less helpful, just because the concept, when I say there is nothing after I die, I'm not saying that the rest of the universe fails to exist. I'm just saying I no longer exist, and that's a way that I use to describe that. Are there actually people who think that, beyond solipsists, obviously, when they die, everything ceases to exist? Is that what they're arguing against?
I don't know about that, but there are a lot of people I've heard call into other atheist shows and express concern for going into darkness or a black void after they die and spending eternity there. And I've also done a lot of searches on Twitter, and I've found that there are actually I found hundreds of people that say they are afraid of the black void after we die, or nothingness after we die, or eternal oblivion after we die. And Richard Dawkins also recently said that after we die, it will be peaceful oblivion. And so there's this myth. A lot of people refer to it as darkness and blackness. It's very prevalent in the atheist community, and like we who are helping propagate the idea of generic subjective continuity we want to offer an alternative view to that, like the black void.
Right. Okay. Like I totally get it, and I agree with you that the best way to go about that is to be like, hey, you know what? If you're scared of not existing anymore, or if you are picturing this dark void, that's not actually like accurate. And I get that 100%. And I think that's a very useful step to take in terms of, especially people coming out of a religion where they thought there was a heaven and now they're realizing there isn't. I'm super curious about the desire to, turn this, is this like a philosophical concept now? Like why use these big words for it, I guess is my question.
Well, Sam Harris recently brought it up in his last podcast called The Paradox of Death. And so it is gaining some popularity as far as that's concerned. But it's based on something the philosopher Tom Clark said in his he's the one who coined the term in his essay, Death, Nothingness, and Subjectivity. It's on naturalism.org. And it's, so yeah, it is we're trying to make it more visceral for people to understand that, it's all in philosophical lingo, but it is actually an extremely simple concept.
So you know what? This is the kind of thing that I would love to get people's input on, because I'm sure people are watching this going, wow, that's being put in a very, very generic way, or very, not a generic, it's being put in a very esoteric way. But essentially you're just saying after you die, other things will continue to be conscious. Everything won't end. It's just you. I personally don't derive extra comfort by that.
Me neither, actually. I think it's kind of I don't like it. I wish it weren't the case, but it's I think we need to tell each other the truth, and like, if it is true, then we need to face this truth. And
I agree. I don't know. I think that I'd love to see in the comments, and maybe we could put up a poll about whether or not people think that, first of all, framing it in an esoteric way, calling it, generic subjective continuity when it comes to death, and batting that around is either something that A, is going to derive comfort, or B, just be a game that we like to play with each other, something that we can toss around philosophically, because personally, I'm not keen on it. It's not, I don't know, man.
I would suggest checking out like the talks. There's talks on YouTube by Tom Clark, and definitely checking out Sam Harris's podcast that I mentioned. And so, I mean, it is very relevant, but at first it's not exactly clear why it's relevant, but it actually does give us a good, I mean, there's many reasons to be a good person, but it gives us yet one more reason to be a good person too.
So, I mean, on the one hand, it's always good to have a tool that is going to work in certain situations. And I think that this is one of those tools. So like, if you are talking to an apologist who is throwing big words at you, and you are doing your best to kind of combat that with your own philosophy, that would be a great place to bring that in. Or if you're talking with somebody who might be deconverting or might be philosophically minded and asking these questions, pointing them in that direction and giving them a phrase to look up to find more information, great, super, super helpful, 100%. I think the thing that is most interesting to me is that this doesn't feel like, this feels like a given. In a way, like if we believe that there are other conscious beings outside of ourselves and we are not contingent in making the world happen, then of course, when we die, everything else is going to continue, right? It feels kind of like the antithesis of this would be somebody saying, when I die, nothing else happens outside of me. And I haven't engaged with a lot of people who think that way. So I'm just curious about the other side of this argument and who might hold that position, if that makes sense.
Well, I definitely read Tom Clark's essay, but recently in Ann Seth's new book, it's called Being You, he actually, I believe it was in the first chapter, he said that he gets comfort out of the idea of there being oblivion after we die, because, he says he compares it to being unconscious and sleeping.
Sure.
And that's not the case. We won't be we will not be resting in peace after we die.
No.
It'll be yet more experience after we die instead.
I feel like this is... I don't know. Yeah. I mean, on the one hand, yes, there will be more experience. But if you just say that to somebody, what they're going to take away is that you believe that you, as an entity, as a consciousness, will continue to experience things after you die.
Especially with the reincarnation portion. Any kind of,
Like, I like the concept. I think it's beautiful. And I think that it's comforting. I find it comforting, at least. I'm super curious about like where practically this worldview would come up against opposition and what that conversation would look like. So if you theory that Ted is positing here, call in. I want to hear your side of this too.
Yeah, and I want to see this in the comments. I know we've got to get to the next call, but Ted, thank you for calling in. And You're
welcome.
Yeah, I hope you saw benefit in the call.
I did. All right, thank you both.
Take care,
appreciate it.
Absolutely. Bye.
I now have a new bit of esoteric language to add to my general
Your repertoire.
basket. Yeah, my repertoire of things that make me insufferable.
I can't wait. All right.
I guess that's one way to shut somebody down. That's not a good way to do it. Like I could imagine bringing up that subject of being like, all right, let's talk about
Generic subjective continuity.
Absolutely, because that's what you're talking about, right?
I mean, and that is where it could be very useful. Like if you
want to shut them down.
Right. And there are situations where you need to shut someone down. So if you can be like, oh, you're talking about this.
Ooh, I know who. Those elders at the church who just are the smartest ones in the group and who are just going to try and run circles around you. You drop that and just see how quickly they get a little bit more humble. I'm good with that.
Yeah, there are situations where I think it would be useful. I just haven't encountered the opposite of it, really, in any way that is not just semantic, right? Like, if someone says, I die and then there is nothing, yeah, technically you can interpret it as, I die and then everything ceases to exist around me. But what you have to understand most of the time is that they're just talking about their own subjective experience goes away.
It does, or at least there's that break. And really, honestly, that talking about sleep, I had a bit of an existential crisis. I remember about a year ago, you and I were talking about the teleporter problem. Mm-hmm. And this idea of any break in your continuity of consciousness. What if the old you is gone, vaporized, and you're just a new you with all old you's memories, and it really, it brought back that childhood fear of going to sleep at night. Because I'm like, there's a break in my continuity. Like, it's wild, but it's a fun kind of path to go down. But I know that we're going really, really long on that call. So let's move on. Let's talk to Lord in California. Lord, you're live with Eric and V.
Hi there. Hi, guys.
Hey.
How are you doing today?
I'm doing very well. How are you guys?
There was a technical issue with the camera where we froze up for a couple of minutes, and I unplugged, ran behind the computer, and started doing everything I could to get the camera restarted to get the feed over with the signal so that we wouldn't have to turn off the show and turn it back on. And it came back on. And I feel untouchable.
Wow.
I know, really good. But that's not what you're calling in about. What did you want to talk about today?
Yeah. So I've been watching the show for a little bit, and I've been thinking, like, each week, what is interesting to talk about? Because I don't want to waste you guys' time. But I want to talk about this time why are we still talking about like atheism rather than anti-theism?
Ooh,
That's what I was thinking about today.
sure. So, well, let's get our definitions right. When you're talking about atheism and anti-theism, how do you draw that line, and why do you think it's important to talk about one and not so much the other, or less the other?
Right. So I'm an atheist, and to me that means someone who lacks belief in a God, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I was seriously considering anti-theism, which to me would meaning the belief that there are no gods.
Okay, so you're talking. Okay, that's actually very helpful, because when I hear anti-theism, what I think of is not so much a perspective on knowing or believing, but rather like the moral ought of theism and whether or not it should exist.
Same here.
Yeah, so what you're saying is essentially hard atheism versus soft atheism, right? So like the concept of there are no
Right.
gods versus I don't personally believe there is a God.
Right.
Okay.
Right. Although the other concept of anti-theism is also something I've been thinking about as well. I just didn't think to call them the same thing. I always had two different definitions for them.
So just because I can, just because I want to throw gas on a fire.
Oh God.
Just as an aside, we're going to move into the conversation. But if atheism is the not being convinced part, and anti-theism, in your definition, would be being convinced that no gods exist, would agnosticism be the position that it cannot be known?
Yeah, I heard of when I listen to Atheist Experience or other things, and they say agnosticism is the position it's not knowable or cannot be known.
Yeah. Okay. So
In the wild, I've talked to other people, and when they say they're agnostic, that usually just means to them, I don't know and I don't really care.
Yeah. Well, I actually
cannot be known.
I actually call that apatheist. But let's dive in really quick to the anti-theism. I don't think that anti-theism is a viable position the way that you're defining it. I don't think that that's a position that I would get behind, and I would actively implore others not to get behind it either.
I see.
Yeah, I know.
I was thinking
we're much more opposed than you think. I disagree with you, sir.
Huh.
Yeah. You want to know why?
Go ahead. Yeah, why?
Sure.
I want to hear this. 'Cause
Sure.
I was thinking about this morning.
Yeah. I want you to think of the pantheon of gods that could exist that you have no idea about, that could be described or defined in any way, including ways that you might agree with, like my God is this cup of water that I'm holding. And because of that, when you say no gods exist, you're potentially pigeonholing yourself into an argument that you wouldn't necessarily back up if somebody said that they believed in a God that is just like the universe, man. So when you're taking a hard position,
then I would push back and just say, why call it God instead of the universe?
Because that's what so the thing is, in order to avoid that no true Scotsman fallacy, in order to avoid this gatekeeping, we need to meet people where they are. And having the conversation, right, like you just responded, asking, why do you define it that way, is great. What we want to avoid is saying, that's not what that means, because guess what? It obviously meant that to them. So either you're scolding them and ending any kind of conversation, or you make sure that you understand each other so that you don't wind up in some weird linguistic hole. But how do you parse that? Because I gave you my reason why I'm against it. Why would you be for it?
I was just thinking about, for example, like cryptids, like the Loch Ness Monster or the unicorn or Bigfoot or things like that. I would say that people would be, for example, anti-Bigfoot rather than a Bigfoot.
I mean,
I would imagine more people would say no, Bigfoot does not exist, than rather I am not convinced, or I have no belief in Bigfoot.
So
And so I was wondering, how much more do we have to look for a God before we say, yeah, God does not exist?
I just,
Can I jump in real quick?
yeah, go for it.
So, Lord, it's interesting calling somebody Lord. It's a flashback.
That's my first name. So
Lord, Lord, just go on with that. So here's my thought. I wouldn't necessarily say that I was anti-unicorn, for instance, because there could have been something that inspired the myths and the legends. Do I think that unicorns will kill anybody who isn't a virgin? No. Do I think that their horns provide magical properties or that they exist like with unicorns shooting out of their butt? Only the butt unicorn. No blasphemy in this house. But my point here is that there could be things that some people at some point looked at and was like, that is that thing. And that thing existed. It's not what we think of now. And when I say unicorn, what most people think of doesn't exist. But going back to what Eric was saying absolutely no version of any of that ever existed or will ever exist feels kind of like an overreach. But for the biggest portion of this conversation that I would focus on is that most God claims that I have experienced have some level of unfalsifiability baked into the definition. And that is the difference between being able to say Bigfoot doesn't exist and God doesn't exist. Because Bigfoot is an animal or a creature that might live somewhere that some people claim to have seen and people go hunting for, and there's not very good evidence, which puts it in the realm of falsifiability. If you define a God as unfalsifiable, that means that we can't measure it scientifically and therefore should reserve judgment and shouldn't just believe in it. But that also bumps it into that category of things that by definition we cannot know for sure one way or the other. So to say something is unfalsifiable, therefore it definitely doesn't exist, doesn't follow. Does that make sense?
I see. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
That's where I come from, at least.
It's just that it feels like a waste of time. Well, when I was a Christian, a few years ago, we were 100% sure that Buddha didn't exist or Muhammad didn't exist or
Sure.
Allah or the other gods or whatever, right? We were, and then that of course our God was real because that makes sense.
Right.
But now I was thinking.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead and finish your thought, and then we'll finish up and.
No, so yeah, now I was thinking, instead of leaving the door open on the possibility of gods, I think it'd be better off that we just close the door until somebody can open it with actual proof and evidence.
So I think there's the degree of confidence piece. Let's just replace I feel like that's just too black and white. Replace it with a degree of confidence. Say you're 99.9%, but you need to be open to that, right? Do you think that the world might end tomorrow? You're 99.9% sure it won't. But if you were given sufficient evidence, you would change your mind, that's
true.
Because of that, just, I don't know, it's a black and white thinking thing. And just for people who are maybe English isn't their second language, and just to kind of help drive the point home, English isn't their first language. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Also second language, if you're really good at it, that's cool.
Second language.
Yeah. It's just all about making sure that you understand what the other person is saying, because I imagine that saying you're anti-Bigfoot would have similar problems. If you said you were anti-Bigfoot, I can imagine a scenario where Bigfoot showed up, started running for office, and you were anti-Bigfoot. That's not a claim about whether or not Bigfoot exists. It's about whether or not you support them.
That's true.
And so just making sure that we're adding the ism at the end of it is going to help. Right. Mm-hmm. So instead of saying, anti-God, right, which carries this implicit assumption that you believe in a God and you're just against it, but saying anti-theism, which would be in opposition to the structure, the religious structure that you're up against. And that's why I define anti-theism, not the way that you have it, but as a opposition to theism. And I think that that is similar to atheism, but different. And because of that, why not both?
Okay.
Yeah.
Not really about all the absolutes.
Yeah.
Just a degree of confidence. Yeah.
Yeah.
I see.
It's a buffet, man. But Lord, hey,
It's a weird buffet.
yeah, but that's how it is in philosophy. You learn, you grow, you add, you change, and you're sticking to that axiom that you want to know as many true things, as few false things as you can. And that's what a lot of us are trying to do. And we're using the best tools we have available, and we're trying to get more tools so that we can continue to do a better job. Lord, we got a couple other callers we want to talk to, though. So is there anything else before we head on over to the next caller?
Oh no, yeah. Thank you guys so much for taking my call today.
Absolutely.
I saw you guys on Talk Heathen. I was wondering where you guys went.
We're here.
We're
You
here.
have your own stream.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm so glad I found you guys. I loved you guys.
Glad you
we're-
found us.
Yeah, have a great day.
Do us a favor, Lord. Share this show out, because more people are finding out about us. They just need to know we're here. If you can.
Yeah, okay, definitely.
Anyway,
Awesome.
take care, Joe.
Bye.
Or Lord.
Yeah.
Sorry.
You call him Joe?
I did, because I've got Joe on my mind.
Got Joe on your mind.
I do. I think we should talk to Joe.
Okay.
All right.
We can talk to Joe.
Good. All right. Joe in Virginia, you're live with Eric and V. Hey, Joe.
Hey, Erica. Ivy, how are you?
Doing good.
Good. Happy to be talking to you.
Yeah, it's good. You guys are doing a good job. I appreciate your cordial conversations.
Well, thank you.
Cheers.
Better than your counterparts at.
We don't want to sling mud. If we're going to do our best to be examples of what the kind of conversation we want to see, we can't include slinging mud.
You don't like slinging mud. I like slinging mud.
Well, okay. Anyway,
To each
Joe.
their own.
Yes, you wanted. It says
Okay.
you are a religious caller. It is not the first time that you've called, and you want to
Yeah, we
talk about.
talked once.
Yeah, you want to talk about the cosmological
once.
argument.
Yeah, I'll just give you.
Yeah.
Oh, first I want to ask you a question. When is your debate with Dean?
My debate with Dean is in February in Ohio.
Yeah.
And I'm really excited about it. If I can get some promotional materials, I'll start posting it out on social media. But if you're in Ohio, and I think it's at Ohio State
Yep,
University.
in Columbus.
Yeah. And if you're not busy in February, you should come and say hi.
Is it going to be on YouTube?
I would like to. Part of my things that I requested as in terms of going and doing the debate is that we get a copy of it. I don't know where we would post it. Might post it on my channel, but my
Might mirror
channel's
it
kind
on
of
both.
defunct.
Yeah.
So
We'll find a way to get it to people.
Yeah, but Joe,
Yeah.
as a
I'll watch it.
as a religious person, that means a lot. So you are.
Well, I'm not.
I'm sorry?
a theist, but I'm not religious.
Got it. Got
Okay.
it.
I made an assumption. So
All right.
So why don't you present the cosmological argument, and then let's talk about it.
Okay, this is just my version, which I kind of made up for. It's related to the other cosmological arguments, but I'll
Okay.
just give it to you. Do you want me to give you all the premises, or do you want it one at a time?
Joe, something happened. There's a lot of clicking all of a sudden. And I don't know. It almost makes me think that you're all of a sudden moved to near power lines, or that you're popping.
Like a pen. It sounds like someone's like popping a pen open and closing.
Probably. Maybe there's a pen. I have a pen near me. So
Oh,
can you hear me now?
called it. Yes, we're
Nice.
good.
Okay. Go ahead.
Okay. The first premise is the universe exists.
Okay.
You want me to go to number 2, 3? Okay. You want
Yeah.
to do the whole thing, or just one at a time?
I appreciate the one at a time. We're with you so far. The universe exists.
Okay, and I guess we'll call the universe all of space-time reality, space-time matter, whatever.
Okay.
Everything.
Okay.
Okay, number 2 would be either the universe is infinite into the past and has always existed, or it had a or is finite into the past and had a beginning.
I'm having trouble thinking of what a third option would be. That
Yeah.
sounds like a dichotomy.
It sounds
Either it had a
correct.
beginning or it didn't, which is right
Okay.
along with the cosmological argument. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I guess it's either it's always existed or it had a beginning and began to exist. So,
okay.
all right. So then number 3 would be the universe cannot be infinite into the past. I can give you the reasons for that, but the universe cannot be infinite into the past for 2 reasons: because actual infinites do not exist, and it is impossible to traverse an infinite.
Okay.
Well, that's the one we're probably going to get stuck on.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
So
that's the one.
So do you want the arguments against that specific position, or would you rather us skip ahead and tell you why, even if that was true, it has nothing, it doesn't get us any closer to a God belief?
Okay, my thing doesn't even end with God. It just if you disagree with this, then we can talk about it. If you agree with it, then we can go on. I don't know. Do you want to think about it, or talk about it?
I mean,
I can give you 2 reasons why
let's
it's impossible.
You know what? There are so many people who will get caught up on this beginning part. Not a lot of people get to see what happens afterward. So let's grant that the universe had a beginning for the sake of this conversation. Mind you, I am taking a step into uncomfortability here because I feel like I'm starting to talk out of my butt because that's not something that I know. But I'm willing to go with you. So what's the next part?
Okay, I mean, I can give. You want me to? Can I explain to you why it cannot be infinite into the past? Or
So here's the thing. For the call-in show format, I want to make sure that we have time for the next part. And if we get hung up on this one, I feel like that's all that this conversation is going to get to do.
okay, I mean, all right. If you don't want to talk about it, if you want to accept it, that's fine.
Yeah, just for the sake of
okay.
argument. What's up?
Okay, so number 4 would be therefore the universe had a beginning.
Okay.
And this is kind of just the last one. I didn't end off with God. I just want, if the universe had a beginning, it cannot cause itself. Therefore, something that is not the universe must have caused the universe.
How do you know that?
Yeah, that's like everything else, granting what you are saying. So if we were to grant the third premise that the universe could not have been infinite, which, some people would definitely agree with, then everything else seemed to follow really well up until that 5th one.
Yeah.
And that kind of pulled in some stuff that seems like a little bit out of left field. So can we dive into that one a little bit?
Sure. Which part do you disagree with?
Most of it. Let's start with creation. So can matter be created or destroyed? No, it can't.
It can't?
No, it can't. It can be converted. It can be converted. And we've definitely seen matter be rearranged into things that we've given different definitions to. But that creation of matter isn't something we've really observed. So if we don't have any evidence for that, then how can you make a claim that something like that happened? We don't have anything there to provide evidence for that. It's just a weird leap in logic.
Okay, so if you're going to say that matter cannot be created or destroyed, then you're saying it's eternal, right? Then the universe would always have existed. You'd be disagreeing with my second premise.
Right.
The universe has always existed.
I'm saying I don't know. So let's say that so right now we're getting into hypotheticals. And if we're getting into the hypothetical of how does matter get created, since we have no idea, then who's to say that it didn't create itself? Who's to say it didn't voip into existence all on its own?
So you're granting me that the universe had a beginning, so that we'd say that that's matter, right?
I'm trying to so we can have this part of the conversation. I gave you a hypothetical where it's just as valid. It's just as valid when we're in that hypothetical space. That actually I think it's more valid because then we're not introducing agency. Like if you're saying that, it had to be created by something outside of itself, you're talking about intent, you're talking about agency, you're talking about ability and capacity, right? Then you have these hypotheticals of God going down to the universe store, picking up the supplies and, creating it. It's just this weird set of assumptions built on top of each other. It seems like Occam's razor would just say, okay, well, then it must have created itself.
No, sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you, but...
No, what's up?
I haven't mentioned God. I've just said if the universe had a beginning, something cannot cause itself. That's illogical.
So there's a difference between cause and creation in this context.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I didn't say created. I just said cause.
You said the universe could not have created itself.
Okay. I think. Okay. Either way, let's just go back to cause then.
Okay.
The universe cannot cause itself.
Okay. How do you know that?
Because it's illogical for something to be able to cause itself. It would first to cause yourself. You have to exist before you existed, which is not logical.
Which is amazing that you would then take an extra step into absolute not logical land to assume that there's something that can exist when there is no time or space. Right? You have to have a universe to have time and space.
Yeah,
and
that's kind of where this breaks down for me, Joe, is I agree that it feels really like counterintuitive to say the universe caused itself, right? Like that's like, wait, what? I don't think I would agree with that, but I don't know. But it feels weird. It doesn't feel intuitive. But it also doesn't feel intuitive to say that something could exist outside of the universe, especially if we're talking about the universe including space-time. So, like, we're kind of between a rock and a hard place here.
Yeah, it is.
Which is the cool part about this argument, because it puts up these concepts, all of which feel counterintuitive. So relying on intuition is not a good way to go about it.
Right.
Can I give you an analogy that would be kind of like similar to this? Why something can't cause itself, and you see if you agree with this one.
Sure.
Let's say Mark Zuckerberg got the idea for Facebook from a message from Facebook. That's impossible, right?
Yes, that is impossible.
Okay.
Why would that be impossible?
Because you're putting the cart before the horse.
Because time and space exist, and in our understanding of space and time, that cannot happen.
Yeah, it's linear.
But the problem with talking about this in terms of, well, it doesn't make sense in our space-time, is that everything we're discussing is outside of that space-time, whether it's the universe creating itself or whether it's an entity outside of the universe causing it to exist. We're talking about non-space-time related concepts by saying, well, it doesn't make sense in the concept of space-time,
Okay, I guess we can just agree to disagree. I would think.
So here's the thing, Joe. I want to know why you disagree, because I think we've got some really, really solid points that are convincing. So where are you not convinced?
Okay, can I make my point?
Yeah, go for it.
If the universe began to exist, which you granted me, maybe you don't believe that, but
we granted.
I don't believe it's possible for something to cause itself.
Okay.
So if all of space-time matter came into existence, whatever the cause is has to be separate from whatever caused it.
So
things can't cause. As I said, I don't believe things can cause themselves. If you think that, then that's fine with you. But I personally don't.
It's not that we think that that's a thing that happens right now. We agree that within the confines of this universe, that doesn't seem to be the case, nor are things created out of nothing in this universe, right? Everything that is created has other components that already existed, just being reformulated into something new. So we have rules in this universe, it seems like, that we cannot break. But the problem is using that intuition about what happens in this universe to talk about something that may or may not have happened outside of the space-time rules that we abide by. So it's like saying, well, you can't king me on you can't king me because we're playing chess. And it's like, well, exactly. If we were playing a different game, we would have rules to go by, and it seems counterintuitive to apply the rules of one game to another. But that's kind of what we have to do in this scenario. We're not able to experience what the world, see, like even the way we talk about it. What would the universe look like without space-time? We have no idea how that would even work.
Or is that even a thing? Like I'm under the impression that without those, there is nothing. And so because of that, the idea of something being outside of space-time is equivalent to being without entirely. So can something without matter, can a lack of matter create anything? Can you have agency without matter? I don't think so. Can you have agency and
Why do you think that?
Because I don't think that you can make decisions without a brain.
Okay, well, you would have to demonstrate that, right? That's impossible.
Sure, absolutely. Ta-da, everything. Why don't you, the claim is, right, I said you can't make decisions without a brain. That's a positive claim. Cool. Working brains, making decisions. I feel like I have an abundance of evidence there. Where, do you have evidence to the contrary?
I didn't make a claim, you did.
No, I gave you, I'm saying that our society is an abundance of evidence.
Of course, we only know the physical world, but that doesn't
Cool.
mean it's impossible for there's something to exist outside the physical world.
So the time to wonder that is when there's evidence. Do you have any kind of evidence?
Well, my syllogism was supposed to be it, but you don't accept it. So
No, because the thing is, you're implying that there already exists a creator in that example. You talked about Mark Zuckerberg getting a message from Facebook, right? And so in this example, you have.
It was just to show that Facebook couldn't cause itself. Something had else. It may not be a perfect analogy,
but it also carried an implicit assumption that there was a creator there. You see where I'm going with this?
I think we should get away from the creator component just because clearly Joe doesn't want to go there. So we're putting words in his mouth. I'm just
saying there has to be a cause that's separate from what is. So, like, I couldn't cause myself, right? Something separate from me had to cause me.
Right, but Joe, it still goes back to the problem that I have with this whole thing, which is I agree. In the context of our universe, that is accurate. But there is a whole other component to your argument that presupposes that there was something outside of the universe prior to it that did not play by those rules. So why are you using the rules of this universe to make your case for something that wouldn't have played by those rules anyway?
So we can keep this, I don't want to get too upset or whatever.
Oh, we're not upset. We're just engaged.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So you granted that the universe began, you granted me that, even if you don't believe it, that the universe began to exist.
Sure.
Okay, so would you agree that it either caused itself or something separate from it caused it?
In the absence of other possible options, I guess.
Okay, so
but
what do you think, V? Do you think those are the two options? Or
well, can I just put the caveat that I don't understand how cause can be a useful word in the conversation. I don't think you can cause something, or anything can be caused without time. It kind of leads us back to a nonsensical place, and so I think I'd better phrase it that if the universe began to exist,
okay,
we don't know why or how.
I mean, it's obvious. We don't. That's what we're trying to figure out, right?
Sure. It just takes the word cause out, because I don't even know if cause is useful. But V, you were going to...
Yeah. I think we're not trying to pin you into, like, well, what do you think caused it? Because I know that's not the purpose of this call. Although if you want to call back and talk about that, that would probably be more useful in getting us to a theism claim. But what we are saying here is that when we talk about the word cause, like our language is so tied into our understanding of time and cause and effect that we already implicitly link up our understanding of space-time in explaining how space-time came to be, which is tricky to do. And so for me, saying, well, did it get caused? That suggests cause and effect and a linear timeline, which didn't exist at the point we're talking about. So maybe, like, I think honestly, you're if we were to grant that the universe began to exist, whatever that means, then that would be where it has to stop before we start getting into hypotheticals. And it's fun to play around with them, but we really can't talk about what happened before time without using time-based language. It's one of those weird things that our brains just can't do.
That's true. You can't. Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people, when they talk about the column, you can't use any of this specific type of language.
Yeah.
If the universe began to exist, there was no time, and I think that's a legitimate, thing where Eric says, you can't do something if there's no time. But I think, at least when they make the argument for the cause, they think, or at least God or whoever, and William and Craig, that simultaneously time started with the beginning of the universe, with the decision to create the universe.
Yeah. So at that point, though, you can point at uranium and say the uranium is deciding to radiate, or be radioactive, because cause does not necessarily entail decision making. All of those arguments that get brought up have this problem that you actually brought up that got highlighted in this call, and that is the assumption of a creator when what you're trying to prove is the creator. And by creator, I'm not necessarily talking about a God, but I'm talking about a cause, a first cause, right? If you're inferring that the first cause exists to back up your evidence of the first cause, then it's just circular.
Well, I mean, it's all right. You can disagree. I disagree with, your points, but yeah, we'll probably just go around in circles. So.
Fair enough. After this call, I'm going to listen back to this, and I'd like you to as well, because I really do want to know why you disagree. Is it because we're wrong, or is it because that entails letting go of the answer that you have?
No, because I think all my premises are, to me, correct. And, the same way you don't accept my arguments, I don't really accept your arguments.
Actually, no, it's not the same. Because if you had convincing evidence, I'm willing to change my mind. I wouldn't say I disagree, and then, I'd say, you know what? Let me think about that, and I'll get back to you. Because
can I say the same thing to you?
Absolutely.
Okay, then I do.
Joe, taking the time to think about that and getting back to us is exactly what we're hoping for in the show, or exactly what we're wanting to see. And it just makes you an exemplar of the kind of caller that we want to have.
Okay, I appreciate it. I appreciate the cordial conversation, and maybe we can talk about something again in the future.
Sounds
Absolutely.
Good. Let us know what you think after you kind of mull it over.
All right, thanks.
All right, bye. Right? I mean, that is a really big assumption that I think a lot of people naturally make. It has nothing to do with that last caller, but it has everything to do with, when people say, you disagree for the same reasons I disagree, I'm not going to take your side for the same reason you're not going to take my side, carries this implicit assumption that the other person's just as dug in as you are. And the point is, we're trying not to dig ourselves in. We want to believe things for good reasons. And if you have a good reason, then we better be up for listening to it.
Right. And I mean, I find cosmological arguments specifically difficult to deal with, just because not only are we stuck in the language and the way that language has shaped our brains, but we also come up against a lot of things that we have to pretend we don't know what's coming next, right? So every time someone comes to us with a cosmological argument, in order to be good interlocutors and actually have the conversation honestly and not jump 5 steps ahead, we have to pretend we don't know where it's going and be like, does the universe, did it have a beginning? That's so interesting. I wonder. And like, yeah, it's fun to talk about, but we know where it's going.
Yeah.
And the frustrating thing is that even if you came to us with a knockout, 100% rock solid argument for the beginning of the existence of the universe, then we would come up against things like the circularity of trying to prove a cause by arguing that the cause already exists. We would come up against the issue of, substance dualism and the concept of having a mind outside of a brain, outside of space-time. We would come up against the problem of, all right, even if we were to grant that a mind could exist outside of space-time, how on earth is that mind creating things out of nothing? Right? Because like, even if we were to grant that my mind existed separately from my brain, I'm going to think really hard and just pop a butt unicorn into existence right here.
Not happening yet.
It does, because it doesn't happen. So there are so many things that are just baked into these arguments, especially when you get deeper into them, that, I mean, I'm happy to have the conversation as many times as is necessary.
Especially because, with the format of the show, that's entirely what we're doing. But if somebody is going to say, hey, that was dishonest of you to keep diving in to a creator, I'll give you the last piece is, I call that God. Ta-da! There's the end, as formulated by, it wasn't Aquinas, it was someone before Aquinas, right?
That's the ontological argument, is Anselm.
Oh, okay.
The cosmological argument was based in the Islamic Golden Age, actually.
You're right.
Yeah.
That's the Kalam.
Yeah.
You're right. You're right.
So yeah, it's interesting. We're fine to talk about it, but when we jump 3 steps ahead, it's because we know where it's going.
Yeah.
And if it's not going there, let us know right away, because like that would be something we haven't heard before.
Yeah. If the argument gets you to there had to be a first creator, you call that creator God. Ta-da! That's the hat trick. Mm-hmm. So.
We've got a couple more lines open, and I know that at this point the theist should be at a church, so you have no excuse. Give us a call, and we'll see if we can get to you before the end of the show.
Absolutely. We do want to talk to more religious callers. But there is, V, do you want to decide who we're going to take?
I know this says that this could be a troll. So if we get the sense that it's a troll, or if we recognize your voice, then we're moving on. If this is an honest question, then I'm interested to hear your thoughts.
Okay. V, of their free will, is choosing to take Mike in Ohio.
Yep.
Mike, you're live with Eric and V.
Mike, he, him in Ohio. Hello.
Hi, Eric and V.
Hi.
Long-time ACA listener, not a troll, just kind of a curious question.
Perfect.
Which you already see. One quick question first, I guess. Is Jamie still part of the ACA? I don't know if you can answer that or not. If not, if he is,
got it. So,
hey Jamie, I was a big fan of.
So Mike,
you and Jamie's work before you and V started working together quite often due to Corona.
Well, I appreciate that. I do want to clarify that V and I are no longer doing shows for the ACA, and that Skeptic Generation is our own thing, and that we've stopped doing projects and things with the ACA back in May.
Yeah. Whether or not Jamie is still involved, I haven't seen him around the ACA very much, but who knows?
I mean, we had dinner with him a couple of months ago, and he appeared to be doing well. He's absolutely still Jamie. And
I think he was starting his own thing as well, so keep an eye out for that, I guess.
Absolutely. And if we, find out what he's up to, I'd be happy to, tweet out and get info out about him and where people can find him.
Yeah, but what's your question, Mike?
Yeah.
So I obviously understand how pronouns work, he, him, she, her. I guess my question is the they, them. Why or in what circumstances
I'm going to get some coffee. Yeah.
do people associate that way?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm happy to have this conversation with you. I have zoomed in on my face so that Eric can leave if he wants.
I don't get to talk. Sorry, I don't get to. I don't have a. Where I live, there's not a very large gay community or a trans community or anything like that. It's a pretty straight white area.
You're calling in from Ohio. Yeah, I get it. I lived there for a while.
I consider myself as open as I can be, and my wife and I have talked about it a few times. Seeing that the pronouns are added to some of the shows now, and we're curious. Why the they them over he her, considering how people recognize themselves.
Absolutely. For sure. Happy to have that conversation. I'm also glad to hear that other shows might be doing pronouns too now. That's very progressive of them. Good for them.
People have been following us and doing what we're doing. I'm glad for that.
That's good. All right. So here's the deal. So where do I start? There are people who do not feel comfortable using he, him pronouns or she, her pronouns. They may want to use they, them. They don't have to. There are other pronoun options available. They're called neo-pronouns, and they're still kind of getting their foothold in society, so it's not as known of a thing. They, them is really the biggest one right now. But essentially, I can speak to my experience, and my experience is that there aren't other options really available to us. We live in a society where people are put in really one of two boxes, and there are people who fall between the boxes. And in order to have other people hold a coherent conversation with them, they need pronouns, and so they pick the ones that work best for them. The reason that I use they, them pronouns is because I do not think that I fit into the she, her box. And I also looked over at the he, him box and was like, do I jump in that box? No, I don't feel like a he, him either. So I'm kind of stuck. Here's this third option. It's relatively ingrained in society. Using they, them to describe people of nondescript gender has been a thing for a very, very long time. I'm just going to use this one. Is it something that's inherent to me, my they, themness, those two words? Not really. It's just the best words to describe my experience and the thing that makes me feel most seen by other people.
Okay, can I tie in just a little bit as well?
I would love to hear Mike's thoughts on that first.
Okay.
Well, I understand where you're coming from with that. Again, basically, I was more looking kind of for a little bit of an education as to why, and at least that sort of checks that box a little bit.
Can I just add a little bit of practical to it?
Absolutely.
Okay, so there are a lot of people who just really, really want to be victims, who will say, well, I can't intuit somebody who uses neo-pronouns. I can't intuit their pronouns, and if I get it wrong, I'm going to get in trouble. Number one, no, you're not. The important thing is that you care. Number two, what if they just told you? What if somebody said, hey, these are my pronouns? That way you wouldn't have to worry about it at all. What if on our name tags, it just said Eric, he, him on my name tag? And that way you would just know, and that would solve that, right? What we're doing on this show is we're adding that to help add clarity. And plus, we live in a society that's so shitty about even recognizing that these people exist.
Right.
That doing that small kindness adds validation and goes, you as a person, you're listened to and you're seen. And hopefully we can live in a society where that is just going to be, well, yeah, I want to know how to respond to or talk to this person using the pronouns that work for them.
In my head, I guess I live in a internet bubble, at least. Texas is not very progressive overall, but I do have a lot of friends and coworkers and colleagues and people in the bubble that uses pronouns. And so for me, it feels just as natural and as respectful as asking someone for their last name or asking, that person just called you Bill. Do you go by Bill or do you go by Billy or William? What do you want me to call you? So it's just kind of adding that extra nicety, that extra bit of respect to engaging with somebody. And that's just what we want to emulate on the show.
Ooh. Can we put it in a similar bin? When I was young, I was told that if I found out that someone who identifies as a woman is married or unmarried, that the respectful thing to do is to call them Ms. or Mrs. or Ms. if it's unknown. Can we use a similar bin to that?
Yeah.
And go, hey, you know what? That's just, you find out a thing, you're learning, you want to
Absolutely. No one's going to be mad at you if they're like, I am a Mrs. Excuse you, I'm married. How could you not intuit this? Right? Like, it's like, oh, no, actually, it's Mrs. Oh, okay. And then that person's a Mrs. in your head.
Yeah. And unless they're in an open relationship or are poly, you should probably not hit on that.
Mike, how are you feeling about this? Does this answer some of your questions?
Yeah, I think so. I think that kind of at least gave me the general idea of a little bit more as to why. I know I'd seen it a few times, and I wasn't sure why the they them compared to either a identifying he she or he she.
Well, some people do that too.
It's just about seeing the person. I mean, it's the entire concept of gender is societal, and so why not?
Yeah, things are much more fluid. I mean, I grew up in the 80s, and things are so different now than what they were then. I grew up very religious and would have thought a lot of the things that I think now are absolutely nuts.
Yep.
Oh, the bigoted views held in religious. Oh my gosh. Aren't you glad, Mike, that we got to, we're the last generations that didn't have social media, back when we were in high school. Oh my gosh.
It's so different now, but I feel as though it's so different for the good and the bad in a lot of different ways. And hopefully the good is eventually going to outweigh the bad with people being more aware of the other humans around them and how the other humans around them feel and see themselves.
Well, Mike, I really appreciate you. I think this was a great call, and I want to encourage people to ask these kinds of questions in the same respectful and thoughtful way that, Mike, you clearly have. So thank you.
I know you guys do. That's why I called you guys today, because I actually kind of just found is Skeptic Generation?
Yeah, welcome.
I just kind of found that you guys were doing this show somewhat recently, and had caught a couple episodes, and
nice.
You guys were
the algorithm kind of picked us up.
Well, thanks so much for calling in, Mike.
Yeah.
Can I ask one more last quick question?
Yeah.
I saw a picture where you guys had rings, and I know you guys were a couple. Are you married now?
We are engaged.
V proposed.
You're engaged. Congratulations.
V proposed at my birthday party. And it was amazing, and I cried. And and we had our closest friends there, and somebody took a picture. You can see that on our Twitter, both of our Twitters. But if you want to know kind of the details on that one, we did a show on V's channel.
Yeah. So we did an hour-long live stream and answered people's questions about it and told the story. So if you want to check that out, you can go to youtube.com/VRoseLaBianca, and it's up there.
Yeah, this format isn't super conducive to it. I know people are like, wow, they're so cold. We don't really, but it's just because it's the format. We're in love, we're happy, and for people who do want to see that, yeah, check out that episode.
Absolutely.
Good. Okay, thanks. And I'm glad I wasn't a frustrating Christian.
No, you're good, man. Take care.
I just realized I haven't had his thing up. I don't know for how long, but sorry, Mike. That was actually a really good call.
I agree. I was going to say me too. I agree. Let's jump in and talk to Joe for a few minutes. I know we're running long, but I'd love to say hi to Joe.
Absolutely. Let's do that. I'll get his name up here.
Awesome. Joe in Texas.
Yes.
Hey, Joe.
Yes. How are you?
Doing well. A fellow Texan. All right. Well, what did you want to talk about today? What did you want to talk about today?
I always wonder about the universe, whether it's finite or infinite. And I think it's infinite because, there won't be any end, You can find where it will end, So if the universe is infinite, then we don't need time and space, That means we don't have a beginning. Is that right?
So people draw these conclusions about the universe being infinite and say, well, it can't be the case because, these types of infinites can't exist. And I disagree.
Okay.
I don't have. Go ahead.
Let me ask you this. If I sit in my backyard and if I launch a rocket into space, and if I have the resource for unlimited fuel,
Mm-hmm.
it will go on and go on and go on, where will it end?
That's a good question. If the universe is infinite, it won't. If the universe is constantly expanding, which we've seen, as far as what professionals have told us, then that rocket's probably never going to get outside of that expansion. But if somehow magically it could, I don't know. But I don't see cause to think that forever is necessarily not possible. Just imagine this. Just imagine, a universe that pops up like a bubble, right? That you have this expansion until such point that maybe another universe is created and it just continues. It's on a loop. There are lots of possible situations, and right at this point, we're just talking about hypotheticals, but I just don't see why infinite is verboten, why it can't be. Yeah.
Well, my thing is, if it is finite, that means, there is something on the other side, right? Because there is no wall or anything that is preventing, anything to go into space.
So V actually had a great point about this.
Did I?
You did.
Oh, what did I say?
Sure. So we're talking about, you're bringing up a wall, and I'm pretty sure I'm following, but just in case people aren't, this idea of this expanding universe carries this idea that what if all of space-time, since it needs to be inside of the universe, there's an expanding. You're saying that if there's this wall on the outside, that there has to be another side. I think that's a nonsensical idea. V, earlier on in this show, you brought up that seems like an intuition. This intuition that if there is a wall, then there must be another side to that wall. I don't think that intuition works here.
Okay.
That's like...
Can I ask you
go ahead.
question?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I read the Bible. I used to be a Catholic, but there is nowhere it says what happened to Jesus between 12 and 30 years of age, because he was in his sexual prime, and he was a prophet like Muhammad. Muhammad was, all about sex and women and rape and everything,
Mm-hmm.
So he is also another prophet. So I was thinking, now they are saying he was also a womanizer. Is there anything to it, you think?
You actually, you've had Bart Ehrman in the background all week. And there was somebody who actually brought up this question about, did Jesus have a wife? Did Jesus have kids? Why don't we have, records of this character between, for most of his life? And I really liked what Bart Ehrman brought to the table there, which was there are definitely a lot of legends about it. There are a lot of people who hypothesize, but we don't have any historical data for that time period to look at. And so really, we can hypothesize all we want. We can say, ooh, wouldn't it be fun if Jesus had a whole family, or like maybe was just a womanizer or something?
But that's just fan fiction.
But that is not something we are seeing backed up just because there's nothing. It's not just that we're not seeing things because we have documents telling us otherwise. There is nothing from that time period for him.
Well, that's a good caveat.
Right.
Making sure that there are no written accounts other than, and not even all of the Gospels have them. I'm actually personally of the opinion that the character of Jesus kind of wound up having legends stuck to it over time, and it built up and became more and more of this kind of mythological, thing. And it could have had a person at its core, but I think that how people will say, oh, this was said by the Buddha, and then no, it wasn't. It was just ascribed to the Buddha. And so eventually you have these huge tomes of different sayings of the Buddha, but it's just, there's this tradition of ascribing them to it. I imagine something similar happening to Jesus. And so this whole between 12 and 32, I think that the reasons why those were added was because they needed to be added to convince people, because there were prophecies in the Old Testament that needed to be fulfilled by the Messiah. And so after the fact, they needed to include those in order to have, in order to check those boxes for a Messiah. But I think that, I think that was just added in after the fact so people can try and do that.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you for taking my call.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Joe.
I know we're running long. We got to dive in. Are you ready to dive into Super Chats?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Allison, we're going to catch you in the Discord. Actually, we don't have time to go to the Discord.
No, there's no after show today because we are going to watch a dear friend get married. So
in 3 minutes, we got to go soon. Oh gosh. Okay. She Contrary sent us $5, says, did my astrology signs change each time I was born again? I was born again and again and again and again. Look, I don't believe in either of those, so whatever you want it to be, go for it.
Zach B, $5, says, thank you for your amazing show. P.S. Both of your hair looks fantastic today.
Nice.
Thank you. That was weird. Bye.
Dante shot us $20 and says, God brought them out of Egypt. He hath, as it were, the strength of a unicorn. Numbers 23-22.
I love it. Goodwill Thinking, thank you for your donation and your little coffee chat. That's awesome.
Yay. Made by Jim Bob says, any argument against the existence of God can be used against the existence of truth, which reveals no one is without faith. Jim Bob, you should call in because I think that would be an amazing conversation to have.
You should. And then True Day Hell says, Eric still won't lend me $400, but I managed to scrape together a few cents just to say, good show, you two.
Aw, shucks.
Thank you, Trudy.
This has been an absolute blast.
Okay, also though, I just have to shout out Sardine Man in the chat. This isn't Fortnite, but it's pretty interesting. I want that as our tagline forever and ever. No. This isn't Fortnite, but it's pretty interesting.
Well, I know that we've got to get to the wedding. Thank you for joining us. And until next time.
We've talked a lot, actually, about unicorns today. And the butt unicorn made a couple of appearances. And we can't forget about our Lord and Savior. So I'm going to end this with our traditional goodbye, which is, may the butt unicorn bestow upon you all the magical rainbows from his blessed orifices.
I created the butt unicorn.